Before you rise 5 radiant phoenixes, each formed from flame of a slightly different hue. They shimmer against darkness, not as creatures of fantasy, but as emblems of transformation older than language itself. Every culture, from Egypt to China to the ancient alchemists of Europe, has told some version of this story. A bird that burns, dies, and is born again from its own ashes. Carl Jung loved this symbol because it condenses the whole work of individuation into one breath. Destruction and healing are not opposites in the phoenix. They are the same wing beat. Take a moment. Don't think about which one looks prettiest or strongest. Let your intuition make the choice. Which phoenix pulls you closer before you can explain why? Perhaps it's one blazing gold, another wrapped in violet fire, one crimson as a sunset, one azure as dawn returning, or one white so bright it seems transparent. The one you feel in your chest instead of your eyes, that's the messenger. Because what you choose reveals what part of you is ready to burn, and what part has quietly prepared to rise. Jung said the psyche periodically demands renewal. When life stagnates, the unconscious begins threading images of transformation into dreams and fascinations. That is why you are here, at the gate of symbolic fire. This is not a test of survival. It is a mirror showing what you are ready to outgrow or remember. The first phoenix is gold, its feathers the color of harvest light. Gold fire doesn't destroy, it refines. Those drawn to it are ready for purification rather than revolution. You've built your world carefully, relationships, achievements, reputation, but somewhere beneath success you smell smoke. The gold phoenix whispers that perfection is corrosion in disguise. You've come to the moment when polishing must yield to honesty. The life that once fit so neatly now chafes because you've grown within it too gracefully to remain impressed by it. Your rebirth is subtle, trading applause for authenticity, status for meaning. When you imagine burning, it's not the past you fear losing, it's the mask. Allow the mask its funeral. You will emerge still yourself, only warmer, simpler, freer. The second phoenix blazes crimson, deep as molten iron. This is the phoenix of passion, anger, vitality, the one that doesn't rise quietly but explodes like sunrise. If this bird caught your breath, your renewal will come through courage to feel fully again. Perhaps you've lived efficiently instead of vividly, suppressing fury or desire in order to stay composed. The red fire burns repression. It tells you, emotion is not chaos, it's momentum. The ashes you leave behind are those of restraint. You may quit something suddenly, confess something long hidden, or love someone, including yourself, with a ferocity that scares even you. This is not recklessness, it's reclamation. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The red phoenix embodies that, every repressed feeling turned into fuel. Next appears the azure phoenix, its flame cool like sky over glaciers. Those who feel drawn to it are undergoing a rebirth of clarity and peace. Your life may have been tangled in noise, opinions, obligations, digital echoes. You've tried to manage chaos through thought, yet the intellect itself became a storm. The blue fire arrives not to add more knowledge but to burn doubt. Its smoke smells like silence. The rebirth here is surrender of mental control, allowing intuition to guide decisions once dictated by analysis. You might find yourself meditating, simplifying, seeking solitude in ways your older self found uncomfortable. The ashes left are overstimulation, the rising plume is serenity. When clarity replaces speed, you begin to hear your own pulse again. For the blue phoenix, the new life is the same life seen without distortion. The fourth phoenix glows violet, a fusion of red's intensity and blue's depth. Violet flame has always symbolized transcendence, the alchemy that turns pain into understanding. You chose this because your soul craves meaning from suffering. Perhaps the last cycles of your life have been filled with losses that refused explanation. The violet phoenix teaches the mysterious art of grace, how to bless what broke you. It burns not what happened but how you held it. Trauma becomes compost for wisdom. You emerge neither bitter nor naive but luminous with empathy. Others will sense healing through you simply because you no longer recoil from pain's name. Jung observed that new consciousness often emerges at the spot of greatest wound. The violet phoenix is that wound illuminated. You are ready to transform grief into insight and to guide others through similar fire. Finally, the white phoenix, made of radiant ash rather than flame. Its light doesn't blind, it reveals. White appears when all colors unite, the completion of the spectrum. If this one caught you, you stand before total reinvention, a cycle ending so thoroughly that language struggles to define what's next. This isn't improvement, it's transmutation. You may feel detached, as if old goals, identities, or even relationships are fading not in tragedy but inevitability. The self that existed within history dissolves. A wider self, timeless, begins breathing. You are ready for spiritual rebirth, awakening beyond personality. Don't rush understanding, simply allow unknowing to become home. The white fire leaves no ashes because it consumes even the idea of separation. Your rebirth will feel like remembering something eternal that had briefly forgotten itself through you. Each phoenix burns differently, yet all carry the same wisdom: destruction without malice, change without escape. Rebirth is not self-improvement, it's self-honesty. The part of you most afraid of ending is usually the part most tired of pretending to still live. Fire releases you by proving that you survive it. Now, inside your imagination, picture yourself approaching the ashes. They glow faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat under soot. Kneel, place a hand on them, and notice warmth, alive, patient, waiting. The moment you touch them, the chosen phoenix opens its eyes through yours. This is the instant between old and new. There is no miracle flash, no applause, just breath, the simplest resurrection. You may not yet know what form your rebirth will take, but acknowledgement has begun the process. The unconscious loves permission more than plan. Every spark of choice you make after this, in words, in silence, in the tiny rebellions of authentic living, feeds the ember. Soon, without forcing, fire will find shape. Rebirth always begins as an ending disguised by routine. One morning looks like every other, but something inside you no longer answers to the same name. That feeling, half dread, half curiosity, is the psyche's signal that a phoenix cycle has begun. Jung describes such moments as putrefaction, the symbolic decomposition of the old personality so the essence can distill into new form. The phoenix merely dramatizes what you already sense. Every soul periodically needs fire to remind it of light. If you felt drawn to the gold phoenix, your renewal lives inside refinement. The first flames for you will appear as disappointment with comfort. Work that once fulfilled, relationships that once validated, achievements that once defined now feel strangely hollow. That numbness isn't failure, it's revelation. The archetype awakening here is the sage within the successor. The part that knows the crown's weight can become heavier than its meaning. The shadow of gold is pride polished into denial. The medicine is humility. To change, you must forgive yourself for outgrowing what you once prayed for. Your lesson: learn to update admiration. Keep your discipline, but redirect it from approval to authenticity. Each time you say, "This no longer fits," you breathe new oxygen into purpose. Rebirth for you won't arrive with drama. It will sneak in through honesty. For the Crimson Phoenix, the shadow hides in rage disguised as energy. Passion empowered you for years, but passion sustained too long without rest hardens into anger, not at others, often at stasis itself. Your fire may have burned so brightly that it startled those around you. Sometimes they called you intense, other times inspiring. Yet intensity turned routine echoed emptiness beneath. Jung warned that suppression of opposites breeds shadow. You've suppressed not emotion but gentleness. Now the psyche demands balance. Your new life asks, can you channel strength without struggle? Can you love with equal ferocity and patience? Imagine the Crimson Phoenix midway in its own combustion, the flames no longer attacking but illuminating. You stand before transmutation from warrior into artist, same fire, repurposed for creation. The rebirth word for you is expression. The azure phoenix carries subtler conflict. Serenity can become avoidance. In protecting peace, you may have mistaken numbness for calm. Order became insulation. When chaos knocked at your door, you swept it quietly under analysis. The unconscious noticed. Now it sends dreams of water and wind, shifting forces asking to enter. Your rebirth lies in allowing movement within stillness. Integrate the intellect's purity with emotion's mess. The archetype evolving here is the monk becoming mystic, wisdom changing from rule to revelation. If, during meditation or solitude, a sudden cry or laugh wants to erupt, let it. Catharsis completes contemplation. The blue fire burns denial of feeling. From its ashes rises clarity large enough to include noise. The violet phoenix meets a different shadow, the fatigue of meaning itself. You have spent years making sense, assigning growth to grief, purpose to pain. Magnificent, yes, but even philosophy can calcify. At some point understanding stops healing. It becomes abstraction resisting vulnerability. The shadow of wisdom is weariness, the secret wish to rest from insight. Your psyche now yearns for simplicity, experiencing instead of interpreting. Jung said the self eventually pulls consciousness from extremes back toward life's immediacy. For you, rebirth begins when you stop decoding every fire and feel its warmth directly on skin. The archetype shifts from healer to human. Compassion no longer needs explanation. It breathes naturally. Allow ordinary joys, laughter, taste, friendship, to complete the meta-lesson your losses started. And for the white phoenix, shadow appears as transcendence turned escape. When one glimpses eternity, the material world can feel painfully trivial. You may have detached not out of peace but exhaustion. Spirit grew louder than body, mind thinned into mist. Your rebirth pulls you downward, back into clay. The descent is sacred. Eat slowly, garden, sweat, love, anchor light into flesh. The new archetype here is the mystic grounding into creator. Enlightenment isn't departure, it's embodiment. The ashes you rise from are abstraction, the feathers you grow are presence. Your purpose becomes shining in form rather than fleeing form. Notice how each phoenix reverses its old habit to be born anew. Gold descends from heights, crimson cools its fire, azure opens its order, violet rests its wisdom, white densifies its spirit. Individuation, Jung observed, proceeds by compensation, the psyche endlessly balancing extremes until harmony breathes again. Rebirth, therefore, is not a miracle imposed from above, but an internal correction enacted through symbol. To work consciously with your fire, begin ritualizing the dying phase. Endings frighten because we mistake them for absence. Ritual rebrands them as offering. Write the identity or belief you're releasing on paper. Burn or bury it with gratitude rather than contempt. Fire loves reverence. Then record what gift that version of you left behind. A skill, a lesson, a friend, a scar. In acknowledging inheritance, you eliminate resentment. Rebirth without gratitude merely repeats the old wound in new costume. Gratitude closes gates gently so new ones can open without ghosts rattling hinges. As the ashes settle, reflect on the sensory language of your chosen flame. Gold hums low like evening bells, change through steadiness. Crimson crackles, change through impact. Azure sighs, change through release. Violet thrums, change through empathy. White pulses, change through presence. These vibrations are more than metaphor, they are neurological. When you imagine them vividly, your breathing, heart rate, and neural chemistry align with renewal's rhythm. The psyche and body have never been separate, they simply prefer poetry to instruction when negotiating change. You might notice external echoes already. Conversations ending naturally, projects pausing, instincts shifting foods, music, colors. These are temperature gauges of the metamorphosis underway. Don't rush interpretation. Transformation ferments at its own speed. Jung compared individuation to growing roots downward as the branches reach upward. Slow, silent symmetry. Trust that symmetry. Fire's job is not spectacle, it's purification. If fatigue visits, let it. Every rebirth drags both ash and air. Between burning and rising lies stillness, a kind of emotional chrysalis where consciousness feels blank. Resist the urge to label that blankness as depression or failure. It's incubation. The phoenix, when invisible, is still alive, breathing under soot. This interval is your psychic exhale before new oxygen fills the lungs of the future. After the flames come the fragments, the quiet rearranging of life that follows every symbolic fire. Rebirth isn't one cinematic moment of flight, it's a gradual rehearsal of light. Each phoenix changes the world not by spectacle but by steady illumination of daily patterns. You awaken inside the same circumstances, yet perception has morphed, and that alone alters everything. What once drained now disciplines. What once frightened now fascinates. If you carry the gold phoenix, your renewal manifests through simplicity that feels like luxury. You start streamlining habits, smaller circles, slower conversations, deeper meals, fewer but truer ambitions. Contentment ceases being complacency, it becomes clarity. You're learning the alchemy of focus, how to do less yet mean more. The paradox is that your external success might even grow, not because you chase it, but because authenticity is magnetism. People feel your transparency and trust it. Still, your challenge will be boredom. The old drive to improve may whisper. Smile at it. Tell it improvement already happened. The Gold Phoenix's daily mantra is calm excellence, meaning you bring radiance to routine without declaring it special. The Crimson Phoenix expresses rebirth through courage in vulnerability. After emerging from fire, passion no longer needs performance, it has matured into presence. You begin saying truer things, and silence begins feeling safer because you no longer fear what it hides. Conversations that used to intimidate now energize. In relationships, you trade thrill for depth, conquest for connection. You probably find emotions flowing without rehearsal, tears that arrive kindly, laughter that surprises even you. Your old armor, once heavy, now looks ceremonial. You might even keep a fragment of it as jewelry, a reminder that fierceness can be beautiful when gentle. The world perceives newfound warmth in you. Fire that doesn't burn, it cooks. The Azure Phoenix's transformation shows itself through creative order. You realize peace isn't absence of noise but mastery of rhythm. So you curate your world like sound design, alternating quiet and expression consciously. You learn when to disconnect digitally and when to re-engage. Meditation moves from ritual to reflex. Clarity begins spilling into practical choices. Communication improves, finances stabilize, sleep returns. You might bite off less simply because discernment feels delicious. Through polite boundaries, you give yourself back to yourself. This is rebirth via refinement, the body learning that calm is productive too. For the Violet Phoenix, change unfurls as compassionate authority. You transform insight into service. People start approaching you naturally for advice or healing presence. Not because you advertise wisdom, but because pain polished you into a safe mirror. Yet you're careful now not to confuse helping with carrying. You practice the art of listening without rescuing, guiding without ownership. Your joy returns spontaneously in mundane places, light spilling across floors, strangers' kindness at grocery lines. Where once you were survivor narrating redemption, you are simply human enjoying reincorporation. Your past's intensity has condensed into intuition. When you speak, words land gently but deeply, like rain on drought soil. The White Phoenix lives its renewal almost invisibly. You might even look the same, yet people will remark, something about you feels different. Presence becomes your language. The body emits quiet light. Many outer goals dissolve, replaced by continuous awareness, eating, walking, breathing as meditation. You listen more than you speak. Tasks once tedious gain elegance because perception sees the divine in detail, light on water, texture of bread, the delicate mechanics of a friend's laughter. You exist as witness and participant at once. The White Phoenix doesn't lead revolutions, it humanizes enlightenment. Seeing you calms others, and you rarely notice because it's natural now. The only remainder of former chaos is compassion for those still entering their blaze. No rebirth is solitary. The phoenix that rises always does so in community of elements. Air fans flame, earth holds ash, water cools remains, fire renews spirit. Likewise, your rebirth interacts subtly with others. The gold inspires stability in teams and families, crimson revives enthusiasm, azure organizes, violet comforts, white harmonizes. You, therefore, become catalyst for many rises yet to come. Jung would name this unconscious contagion the ripple of individuation. When one person reintegrates inner conflict, it influences the collective psyche toward wholeness. Personal fire becomes communal warmth. To work consciously with this new current of energy, start making decisions symbolically. Before any task, ask, does this choice feed the ashes or the flame? Meaning, does it reinforce the outdated identity or nourish the emerging one? The answer arrives not as logic but as sensation. Heaviness signals ash, levity signals fire. Follow levity without guilt. Evolution rarely shouts, it tingles. The more you obey that subtle guidance, the smoother integration flows. During transition, dreams may grow vivid. Record them. The phoenix often appears as light, wings, or flight motifs, but sometimes it appears reversed, a feather soaking in rain, a nest built of glowing twigs. These images mean the psyche is adjusting the temperature between intensity and embodiment. Don't analyze hurriedly, simply witness. Inside every dream your younger selves meet your becoming self, and their meeting keeps the furnace balanced. As the days unfold, you'll sense that time itself has altered texture. Things accelerate yet feel slower, emotions move fast but land softly. This is the sign that chaos has converted to curiosity. The inner rhythm now matches life's rhythm, producing harmony that ordinary logic can't explain. You begin to notice serendipities, people returning, opportunities aligning, colors repeating. These aren't coincidences, they are the ecosystem responding to renewed alignment. The Phoenix principle is reciprocal. What you transform transforms your world. And sometimes, another small burning occurs, a lesser identity flares out unexpectedly. You handle it differently now. No panic, only respect. You've understood fire not as punishment but as maintenance. Rebirth becomes routine hygiene for the soul, small, elegant cleanings of assumptions before they fossilize into habit. This ongoing renewal keeps you contemporary with your own spirit. When exhaustion whispers again, remember the timeline of every phoenix: combustion, silence, ascent, flight, reflection. You might be in silence now. That doesn't mean regression. Fire retreats inward, rebuilding fuel. Let yourself pause. The paradox of sustained transformation is rest. Even evolution naps. As you live within the rhythm of your chosen phoenix, a new perception begins to bloom. The fires are not isolated. Each type of flame feeds the others. The psyche rarely confines itself to one vibration, it borrows light as needed. Life itself becomes a constellation of rebirths, sometimes golden refinement, sometimes crimson courage, sometimes blue serenity, sometimes violet transcendence, sometimes white dissolution, all flickering together to form the spectrum of wholeness. Listen long enough and you'll hear them converse inside you. The gold phoenix offers structure, purpose without panic. The crimson answers with momentum, emotion without chaos. The azure adds calm regulation, depth without detachment. The violet softens the whole system with empathy, wisdom without sermon. The white completes the dialogue with stillness, light without demand. When these tones harmonize, consciousness steps beyond crisis into cadence. Jung called such synthesis the reconciliation of apparent opposites, the psyche's highest intelligence expressing itself as cooperation instead of competition. You may already feel this partnership manifesting in subtle ways. A day that begins with gold discipline might end with crimson joy, a week of fiery creativity may need blue silence to cool, empathy of the violet sort may open doorways for the white's luminous peace. Rebirth thus becomes not an episode but a lifestyle, a continuous circulation of psychic elements, a breathing system of renewal. Integration across flames also transforms how you engage the surrounding world. The gold in you teaches others steadiness. Your reliability stabilizes chaotic spaces. The crimson revives motivation in the weary. Your energy awakens hidden ambition. The azure mentors balance. People watching you learn the beauty of thoughtful pace. The violet turns loss into instruction for entire circles of friends. Where you forgive, others remember how. And the white inspires awe, reminding anyone near you that presence is the purest argument for meaning. You might not notice this influence immediately, but subtle feedback will arrive. A colleague thanks you for calm during crisis. A stranger mentions feeling better after briefly talking with you. These are confirmations of resonance, your rebirth generating echo in the collective psyche. Jung would have said that the archetype of the phoenix belongs to everyone, but each person who embodies its process offers proof that transcendence remains possible amid routine life. Yet even harmony contains dialectic movement. Each flame carries potential imbalance if forgotten. The gold can overstabilize, turning into perfectionism again. The crimson can overwhelm and scorch the field of gentleness. The azure can cool too much into isolation. The violet may dissolve boundaries in caregiving. The white risks detaching from the material altogether. Awareness is your temperature gauge. When you feel extreme, invite the complementary color. If work obsession tightens, gold excess, add crimson spontaneity, a dance, a risk. If emotion overheats, crimson excess, invoke azure meditation. If detachment freezes connection, azure excess, reignite violet empathy. The psyche loves moderation assembled through dialogue, not denial. You may wonder why the self even requires so many fires at once. Because existence itself moves in cycles of cremation and creation. Cells die, new ones grow. Stars explode into nebulae, dust becomes future suns. The phoenix is simply nature made visible in mythic costume. To burn well is to live organically, accepting decay as design. When humanity resists this law, we stagnate. When we cooperate, evolution accelerates. Your personal rebirth, therefore, contributes to the species' rhythm. Every time one person lets go with awareness instead of violence, collective renewal gains momentum. Observe how your external environment begins mirroring internal equilibrium. Maybe you declutter home or diet spontaneously adjusts toward nurturing foods. Artisans often report that after symbolic rebirth their work changes tone, color palette softens, melodies slow, characters deepen. Relationships follow similar pattern, fewer yet more symmetrical, conversation replacing performative noise. Everything unnecessary reduces itself voluntarily once the soul stops fearing emptiness. There are moments, of course, when the ashes call back loudly, tempting return to old identity. The mind romanticizes the patterns that used to define safety. Recognize this as nostalgia of the ego, not regression. Ego is terrified of transparency. It equates continuity with survival. Smile at the ashes. They loved you well, but remember that familiarity and belonging are different species. Belonging grows where truth breathes. Familiarity resides where repetition hides. Continue walking forward through light that feels both exciting and unfamiliar. That friction is proof of progress. Sometimes you will sense all 5 phoenixes within one single day. Dawn gold for focus, midday crimson for drive, evening azure for calm, midnight violet for reflection, pre-dream white for surrender. No formula required, only attention. The psyche self-regulates as long as awareness listens. Keep small daily check-ins. Which flame governs now? Which is needed next? Treat them as inner colleagues, not hierarchy. In interpersonal conflict, recall this symbolism. It transforms argument into intimacy. Suppose 2 people clash, one erupting in red fire, the other frozen in blue distance. Neither is wrong. Both are performing aspects of renewal at different phases. Recognize flames instead of fault. Speak in temperature. I can feel your fire. I'm cooling down too fast. Let's meet at violet. Metaphors humanize emotion. They return imagination to communication. When relationships adopt such symbolic vocabulary, compassion multiplies because judgment ceases to be literal. If leadership or teaching forms part of your path, imagine guiding others as a keeper of fires. You don't assign phoenixes, you mirror them until recognition dawns. The greatest leaders ignite self-rebirth in those around them simply by embodying their own integrity. Authentic transformation radiates authority more persuasive than any command. At collective scale, humanity itself is walking a phoenix cycle, burning through outdated systems and rising toward new patterns of interconnection. To witness this globally without despair, remember the principle inside every individual rebirth. Destruction precedes creation only because consciousness needs contrast to evolve. Trust the timeline of the greater bird. Civilizations, too, molt. Help the process by practicing it locally, in community, workplaces, families, wherever renewal resists fear. Finally, keep tenderness for fatigue. Even light has thermal limits. After long internal work, rest is sacred, not indulgent. The phoenix herself sleeps inside her own ash before the first heartbeat of flight. In those pauses, do nothing but breathe. Rebirth sustains only if rest reroots it. The integration of these 5 flames is an ongoing spiral, not a ladder. Forget perfection, pursue participation. You are not meant to embody a single fire but to host the council of them gracefully. Let each blaze speak in turn, and your life will remain a moving scripture of renewal, whispered in colors instead of words. The ashes have cooled. The flames that once tore through every boundary now sway like candlelight, steady, quiet, familiar. This is how true rebirth ends, not with thunder, but with continuity so gentle it almost hides its magnitude. You walk through an ordinary morning, the scent of coffee, the sound of traffic, and realize that everything is exactly the same and entirely different. The world hasn't changed, the one perceiving it has. At the summit of the symbol, the 5 phoenixes fold into a single presence, the living fire of awareness. You carry it within your chest as constant warmth, burning yet not consuming. Jung described such maturation as the feeling of timeless life within temporal existence. You will still falter, still grieve, still laugh, but underneath the fluctuations hums an unshakable rhythm, the certainty that life renews itself endlessly through you. Now begins the practice of living as Phoenix. That phrase might sound mystical, but it simply means respond to endings as invitations. When a project closes, bless the closure before you rush to the next goal. When conflict erupts, acknowledge what beliefs must burn for truth to appear. When joy floods you unexpectedly, don't cling. Gratitude itself keeps it alive. This ongoing mindfulness transforms reincarnation from cosmic drama into daily compassion. You will still encounter the old urge to control outcomes, that impulse to hold everything intact so nothing hurts. Meet it kindly. Remember that fire is not cruelty, it's care in elemental form, nature's maintenance. Each letting go you perform, object, opinion, fear, frees energy for creation. Over time, willingness to release becomes instinct. That is the sign of real rebirth, ease replacing effort. There will be days you forget completely, days when exhaustion or cynicism smothers the spark. On those days, symbols rescue you. Recall the color of your original phoenix. Visualize it breathing again in miniature, right at the center of your chest. One slow inhale, one exhale, and light responds. Whether gold, crimson, azure, violet, or white, its tone will return memory of balance. The psyche adores repetition. Each time you practice this, neural pathways of renewal strengthen, until hope feels physiological. Living as Phoenix also changes how you measure time. Linear goals, age, achievement, accomplishment, matter less than cyclical harmony. You tune yourself to seasons. Work during fire, rest in ember, rethink in ash, rise in dawn. Burnout diminishes because you no longer demand constant summer from your spirit. Winter, fall, and spring gain legitimacy. The calendar of creativity resets to internal weather rather than external pressure. In relationships, this maturity radiates as gentleness. You stop insisting that others evolve on your schedule. When their flames flare or fade, you offer space instead of correction. You recognize them as fellow travelers through their own furnaces. This tolerance deepens intimacy. Conversations become more honest, silences more comfortable, separations less tragic. Love expands from possession into participation. Friendship becomes communion rather than comparison. The wider world still burns chaotically. New cycles of conflict, social turbulence, uncertainty. Yet even there, the Phoenix offers perspective. Destruction visible on the surface conceals transformation preparing underneath. Knowing this prevents despair from petrifying into cynicism. You contribute quietly to reconstruction simply by continuing to create, help, listen. Every conscious spirit stabilizes the collective inferno by refusing panic. Jung's insight that there is no birth of consciousness without pain ceases sounding bleak, it becomes promise. To sustain this mode of being, adopt small private rituals of renewal. They needn't be elaborate. Some sit with dawn light for 3 minutes, eyes closed, feeling warmth on eyelids, the ritual of rising. Others light a candle each evening, naming silently something ready to release, the ritual of burning. Some keep a single feather on desk or altar as reminder of weightless resilience. Symbols are psychological nutrition. Small doses keep depth metabolism steady. Creativity will likely surge unexpectedly. After all, the Phoenix archetype sits close to the muses. Making art, writing, designing, cooking, all expressions of rebirth echo the original act of rising from ashes. Channeling creative fire into tangible form grounds transcendence into humanity. The piece you craft doesn't need to be perfect. The act itself completes the circuit between mystic and mortal. Art is resurrection translated into language the senses understand. What, then, of the ashes left behind? Keep some metaphorically. Memory of the last version of you holds compassion for those still contained in their first fires. When someone near trembles on the edge of transformation, you will recognize the smoke and know what to say, or when silence says more. That empathy is your most luminous inheritance. Every phoenix becomes healer simply by remembering what burning felt like. Eventually, the realization dawns that you were never solely the ash or the flame. You were always both, participating in the eternal rhythm that keeps existence dynamic. To identify only with rising would be to deny descent. To identify only with destruction would be to forget light. Holding both, you achieve the rare equilibrium called wisdom. It feels quiet because it no longer argues with impermanence. Walk now into your ordinary tasks, but carry reverence as secret anthem. While washing dishes, imagine gold sparkles in soap bubbles echoing your first fire. During difficult conversations, visualize crimson steadiness beneath emotion. When planning, picture azure geometry organizing thoughts. While comforting a friend, sense violet radiance moving through voice and touch. At night, rest under white stillness, remembering that even darkness glows imperceptibly. Living symbolically doesn't detach you from reality, it saturates reality with meaning. Soon, you may forget you ever chose among 5 phoenixes. That's fine, symbols complete their duty when they vanish into instinct. You simply become the warmth others feel without noticing, the subtle glow in rooms you enter. The final transformation of the phoenix is ordinariness, divinity disguised as daily competence, holiness humming in small gestures. Pause once more. Inhale. In imagination, feel wings unfurl, not grand, just enough to stretch the heart. Listen for the sound they make, the faint rustle of pages turning. That's time itself acknowledging evolution. From now on, each breath writes another line in the quiet epic of renewal that is your life. You have passed through fire and discovered it was home all along. The ashes were never proof of ending, only the letter your spirit wrote to remind you of continuity. And every time the world burns again, you'll remember, nothing real ever dies, it only changes temperature. Keep walking, glowing softly. Because somewhere beneath every sunrise, the next phoenix already breathes, and this time, its name is you.